Hey guys, we begin tonight, not with noise but with silence, except for the sound of the wind brushing gently across the sands of Giza. The stars still shine as they did 4,000 years ago, pinholes of light over a desert that once echoed with voices speaking a language long forgotten. Beneath their gaze, enormous stone forms rise from the earth with unnatural precision. The pyramids' monoliths, so large, so enduring, they make modern cities look like passing clouds. You stand in their shadow now barefoot, the sand cool between your toes. Before you is the Great Pyramid, and in its presence, the air feels heavier. They say this place was built with copper tools and brute force. They say laborers dragged blocks heavier than SUVs across endless miles. And if you believe that, you probably won't survive this story. Because what if they didn't use brute force? What if the world you live in is built on forgetting? So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, breathe deep and walk with me into the sandstorm of forgotten knowledge. Picture yourself arriving in ancient Kemet. The name Egypt gave itself before invaders renamed her. The air smells of crushed herbs and smoke. White-robed priests move like whispers across the temple courtyards. You're not in a world of superstition. You're in a civilization that understood harmony between man, earth, and sky. And rising from that harmony are three monuments aligned so precisely with the stars that even today satellite imaging confirms their arrangement, mimics the belt of Orion. But that's not the only alignment. Stand atop the Great Pyramid and draw a straight line outward. You'll brush past the Nile, then the Red Sea, then India, and across into the Pacific. That line touches more ancient monuments than coincidence should allow. The pyramids sit at the geographical center of all landmass on Earth. Now pause and let that settle in. They didn't have satellites. They didn't have Google Earth. And yet their monument is more perfectly placed than anything we've built since. But placement is just the beginning. Step closer. Look at the stone itself. Limestone and granite. Yes, but cut and stacked with a precision that baffles architects today. There are no globs of mortar, no visible inconsistencies. The blocks fit so tightly together that even a razor blade can't slide between them. How? Some say copper chisels and manpower. But here's the problem. Granite is harder than copper, much harder. Copper tools would flatten and fail against it. Not once. Always. So unless thousands of workers had access to tools stronger than anything we found in the archaeological record, the story doesn't add up. Now imagine this. It's night again. The wind falls still. In the darkness, you hear a low hum coming not from outside, but from the stone. The very walls of the pyramid seem to vibrate softly, like the deep breath of a sleeping god. Ancient Egyptians didn't just build with stone, they believed in living architecture. They believed stone could hold sound frequency, even memory. And this is where we begin to question what we've always been told. Why did they build so tall? Why so exact? Why align with stars, rivers, and Earth's magnetic field? If it was just a tomb, why hide these secrets in geometry, frequency, and orientation? Let's sit here in the sand a while longer. Let your thoughts sink in like footprints. Remember, nothing great was ever built without purpose. And the ancients, they never wasted effort. We walk forward now, hand resting on the warm face of a stone block. You feel a subtle pulse, like warmth, or maybe just your own heartbeat bouncing back from the past. And somewhere beneath your skin, a question takes shape. Not how did they build this, but why was it meant to last forever? Because nothing built today lasts. Concrete crumbles, steel rusts. But these pyramids, they endure earthquakes, time, and even the arrogance of modernity. Maybe they weren't trying to show power over death. Maybe they were building machines for the living. You keep walking slowly, now tracing the path the ancients once tread as they approached the Great Pyramid, not with awe, but with understanding. They weren't worshiping a tomb. They were operating something. And to grasp what it was, we have to look closer at shapes, at angles, and the language of geometry itself. From a distance, the pyramid appears simple, a triangle from any face, 4 sides a point at the top. But that illusion dissolves when you measure. The base of the Great Pyramid forms a perfect square, each side over 230 meters long. Differing by less than a few centimeters, a tolerance nearly impossible to achieve without lasers or computers. The sides rise at a slope of approximately 51.5 degrees, and that angle isn't random. It encodes the mathematical constant known as the golden ratio phi, found in the spirals of galaxies, seashells, and human DNA. These numbers whisper truths that words cannot. What kind of people encode pi and phi into their architecture? Not for ornament, but in structure itself. The Great Pyramid's height, multiplied by 1 billion, equals the average distance from the Earth to the Sun. Coincidence or knowledge beyond their time? Let's pause. Imagine you are standing on that vast limestone base at dawn. A warm light spills over the desert as the pyramid's shadow stretches like a sundial. It casts time upon the earth. And as the day unfolds, every stone, every angle participates in a dance of light and geometry. It's a machine not of gears and pistons, but of proportion and resonance. Built to last, built to align, built to speak to the stars. Each side of the pyramid faces almost perfectly true. North, southeast, and west. No magnetic compass could guide them back then, especially since Earth's magnetic north shifts over time. They were either guided by the stars or something we've forgotten. They even compensated for the Earth's curvature when leveling the base, a detail modern construction often overlooks. Why would they care? Unless the Earth itself was part of the design. The Great Pyramid isn't alone in this language. Pyramids in Central and South America, megalithic sites in Turkey, China, and Indonesia all speak a similar dialect of angles and alignments. These cultures were oceans apart, yet they built monuments that share geometry symbolism and stellar orientation. That raises one question: did they inherit a knowledge older than history itself? Now trace your fingers over the joints between the stones. Feel how the blocks interlock like puzzle pieces without mortar, and yet immune to earthquakes. This isn't just stacking. It's seismic engineering. It's resilience through interconnection. Modern engineers admit we still don't fully understand how they achieved this precision. And without cranes, scaffolding, or blueprints, how did they lay the 2.3 million blocks that make up the Great Pyramid? How did they account for stress distribution, weight-bearing, and erosion, all without ever redoing anything? The pyramid is not a chaotic pile of rock. It is a blueprint made of stone. And we, living centuries later, are only beginning to see what they etched into the earth. Now turn your gaze inward to the passageways carved through the limestone body. The descending passage, the ascending passage, the Queen's Chamber, the Grand Gallery, and the King's Chamber, each placed with stunning precision. They are not random rooms. They are lined with granite, designed with sharp angles and positioned to reflect something. But what? Think back to phi and pi, to the golden ratio and cosmic alignment. What if these chambers were tuned not just architecturally, but vibrationally? If you've ever stood in the Grand Gallery, you know it feels different. Sounds echo longer. The air seems thicker. Ancient texts hinted that sound was sacred. The spoken word, the sacred tone, the chanted name, all were vibrations, believed to move energy and matter. We're not talking metaphor. We're talking physics. Could the pyramid's geometry amplify sound? Focus, vibration, channel energy. Take that idea, place it in your mind like a puzzle piece, and hold it gently. We're not claiming to solve the pyramid's mystery tonight. We're inviting you to feel its resonance, because in a world built on concrete and consumption, Maybe what we've lost is the knowledge that structure can harmonize with nature, that buildings can sing. That form is more than function. It's frequency. And that's the language the ancients spoke fluently. So, as you sit with your back against a 1,000-ton block tonight, look up. Let your eyes follow the invisible lines that rise from stone to sky, from math to mystery, from earth to something far beyond it. We are only beginning to remember what they never forgot. You shift your weight slightly, the warm stone behind your back, humming faintly, not with sound, but with the suggestion of presence, as if the rock itself remembers. The pyramid is not a relic, it's a witness. And like all witnesses, it's waiting for the right questions. Let's begin with this one who actually built it. History tells us it was the Egyptians around 4,500 years ago, using ramps, sleds, and thousands of laborers. But when we peel back the layers of assumption, things get strange quickly. Herodotus, the ancient Greek historian, wrote that it took 20 years and 100,000 men to construct the Great Pyramid. But Egyptologists now say it might have been closer to 20,000 skilled workers, laboring year-round, funded by royal surplus. There's even some archaeological evidence remnants of bakery sleeping quarters tools, but tools made of copper against granite. Even with today's best equipment, cutting and transporting multi-ton stones over miles would be a colossal undertaking. And there are no surviving blueprints, no engineering tablets, no definitive step-by-step explanation of how it was done, just speculation. And this is where the story cracks open. Ancient Egyptian legends themselves suggest that their civilization was not the beginning, but the continuation of something older. They spoke of a time before the dynasties, before recorded history, when divine beings called the Neteru walked among humans and taught them the ways of building, healing, and balance. Some texts speak of Thoth, the god of wisdom, who carried books of power, blueprints of the universe, and knowledge that allowed matter to be shaped by thought and sound. Were these myths or memories? Consider this: the Sphinx, which stands not far from the pyramids, shows signs of water erosion, vertical weathering, that could only be caused by sustained heavy rainfall. But Egypt hasn't seen such rainfall for over 9,000 years, which raises the possibility that the Sphinx and possibly the pyramids predate the pharaohs by thousands of years. If that's true, then who built them? Some researchers call them the first civilization. Others, the builders. They left no cities, no graves, no written language, only massive stonework that defies time. Whoever they weren't primitive. They understood advanced mathematics, astronomy, geology, and perhaps more. Indigenous traditions from around the world speak of sky people or gods who descended in ancient times to share wisdom. These stories, though culturally unique, often share core themes: tall beings, glowing orbs, levitation, energy manipulation, and sacred geometry. And in many of these myths, these visitors did not rule, they instructed. They built structures meant not to dominate, but to align. So now imagine this: a team of ancient architects, long-limbed, long-lived, working not with brute strength, but resonance, using vibration to lift, to cut, to shape. You laugh. It sounds far-fetched. But in 2020, researchers used sound waves to levitate small objects in midair. Sound, after all, is vibration. And matter at its core is just atoms vibrating in patterns. What if the ancients knew how to use frequency to displace weight, to carve with sound instead of tools? It might explain why the stone blocks show no chisel marks, only laser-smooth surfaces and interlocking edges that mimic modern machining. It might explain why no ramps or scaffolds have ever been found. And it might explain why the pyramid's construction seems to belong not to the Bronze Age, but to a lost golden one. Step deeper now into the speculative warmth of what-ifs. You're standing before a civilization that may have predated even Sumer, the first known culture. One that didn't just worship the stars, but worked with them. One that didn't just stack rocks, but encoded vibration, memory, and energy into form. Maybe they didn't build the pyramids to bury their dead, but to uplift the living. And maybe we call them gods, only because we forgot their science. The wind picks up slightly now, curling around the corners of the pyramid, like it knows the way. And in that wind, you hear something quiet, something that might be music or memory or a voice not meant to be translated. It says, "You've only just begun." And so you sit in that desert wind, surrounded by impossibility, knowing that the story of the pyramids isn't about what we've learned. It's about what we're ready to remember. You press your palm against the stone again, but this time, you're not looking for weight. You're listening. There's no sound, and yet the pressure changes subtly beneath your skin. Not just heat, not just texture, but something deeper. You get the distinct feeling that this stone knows. And that brings us to the idea the ancients may have understood long before we did, that stone is more than structure. Stone is memory. Let's linger here. Limestone granite. These aren't just durable materials. They resonate. Modern geologists know this. Tap a granite slab with a tuning fork, and it sings. Now imagine you're not just tapping. It's a chamber built to a precise geometry, lined with stone specifically chosen to echo frequency. Now you're not hearing a sound, you're inside it. The ancients may have believed this, and they may have built their temples and pyramids, not just for form, but for vibration, to encode something, to store something, to awaken something. In fact, there's a theory fringe to some, sacred to others, that the materials used to construct the pyramids weren't just chosen for strength, but for their electromagnetic properties. Granite, especially the red Aswan variety used in the king's chamber, contains high amounts of quartz crystal, an element known to generate piezoelectricity when subjected to pressure. Electricity from stone under pressure. Now pause and think. 2.3 million limestone blocks, many weighing between 2 to 80 tons, stacked with precision, compressing the granite chamber beneath. This is not random. This is design. A generator without wires. A resonance machine made entirely from Earth's own elements. But it goes deeper. Egyptian lore tells of Heka, the life force energy that permeated all things. Heka wasn't magic. It was a fundamental energy, like gravity, like light. The priests and initiates of old didn't see stone as inert. They saw it as a conductor. And the pyramid in their eyes wasn't dead matter, it was alive with intention. Imagine this, you're standing inside the pyramid now in the Grand Gallery. The air is still. You hum softly, just to break the silence, and suddenly, that sound bounces back to you, not once, but in waves. The resonance grows, layering like a looped track of your own voice. Why? Because the gallery was designed to amplify specific frequencies. Some researchers have tested this. Tones around 110 to 120 hertz resonate powerfully inside the chamber's frequencies, known to influence human consciousness, even meditative states. Did the ancient builders know this? Some say yes. Some say the king's chamber was used not to entomb a body, but to transform it. That those who entered lay inside the granite sarcophagus and chanted sacred tones, allowing the frequency to vibrate through their cells, their bones, their consciousness. A healing chamber, a spiritual accelerator, stone, not just as shelter but as symphony. And when you begin to think like this, you realize the pyramid may not be a building at all. It may be a frequency device, a layered instrument that interacts with the human body, with Earth's magnetic field, and with something else, something higher. Now recall those copper tools archaeologists love to talk about. Imagine trying to cut a perfect circle through dense granite using only handheld chisels softer than the rock itself. You wouldn't make a scratch, and yet the sarcophagus in the king's chamber, carved from a single block of granite, features impossibly smooth internal surfaces and perfectly squared edges. It resembles the results of modern machining. There's no evidence it was ever dragged into the chamber. Either it's too large for the corridor. It was carved in place. How, we don't know. Or more precisely, we don't remember. But what if we did once? Some researchers propose that ancient Egyptians or the civilizations that preceded them may have used a forgotten technology, one involving vibration and sound, to mold or soften stone. It sounds impossible, and yet in modern labs, certain frequencies have been shown to alter the molecular tension of materials, not enough to melt granite. But what if you had centuries of applied spiritual science behind you? Even today, traditions in Peru and India speak of mantras, specific sounds that can break the density of the world that can move things. We think of them as mystical. The ancients may have thought of them as tools, because when you treat the world as sound, not substance, everything becomes flexible. And maybe that's what they were doing, not worshiping stone, but playing it like an instrument, storing energy in shape and space, carving memory into matter. They didn't leave us manuals. They didn't need to. They left stone. Still singing. Now you find yourself walking deeper into the pyramid, where the air grows cooler, thinner, denser somehow, not just in temperature, but in presence. The light dims. Footsteps echo oddly against the walls. You're nearing the most peculiar part of the structure, the king's chamber. And it's here the pyramid stops whispering and begins to hum. This is the chamber wrapped in red Aswan granite, quarried from hundreds of miles away, transported by a people with no wheels, no cranes, and no modern roads. But it isn't the mere existence of the chamber that baffles. It's the way it feels. The energy here is different. The acoustics are different. Let's explore that. The king's chamber isn't just a room. It's a resonating cavity carefully engineered for sound to behave in ways we're only beginning to understand. When certain frequencies are produced either by human voice, musical instrument, or natural vibration, the granite walls begin to respond. It's been documented the chamber amplifies specific tones dramatically while dampening others. And there's a pattern. The strongest resonances occur at frequencies around 110 Hz, remarkably close to the tonal center of ancient chants used in spiritual traditions from Tibet to Egypt. These frequencies aren't just sound. They affect the human nervous system. They slow brainwaves. They induce trance. Imagine you are lying inside the granite box at the center of the chamber. Your body hums softly from the tone filling the space, reverberating through your bones. You feel suspended, not asleep, not awake. The stone vibrates with you, around you, beneath you. Time becomes elastic, identity porous. This is not a burial. This is transformation. Some have called it a resonant initiation chamber, designed not for a body after death, but for consciousness during life. A place where sound geometry and energy harmonize to amplify awareness. It's even been suggested that initiates used this space for something like astral travel, guided by sound into altered states where visions, messages, or healing might occur. Now think back to the precision with which this chamber is built. The floor is flat within millimeters. The blocks are massive, interlocked, load-bearing. Above the chamber is a sequence of 5 relieving chambers, layered stone spaces meant to distribute the immense weight of the pyramid above. But their purpose may go beyond mere structural support. Researchers have noted that these upper chambers also resonate at distinct frequencies, creating a stacked harmonic effect, like layers in an instrument, a cathedral of tone. And here's where the story tilts further. In the 1990s, researchers discovered what they described as acoustic hotspots inside the king's chamber. Specific places where sound stands, still magnifies, or disappears. These anomalies aren't random. They seem embedded into the geometry. You don't just hear sound in this chamber, you feel it. In your chest, in your teeth, in your breath. Could this have been the point? The ancients didn't separate science from spirit. Geometry wasn't math, it was sacred. Sound wasn't art, it was power. The way a chamber sings was as important as the way it stood. And in this chamber, it sings to the soul. There's more. Granite, as we've mentioned, contains quartz crystals, microelements that vibrate when compressed. When the chamber hums at certain tones, It's possible those crystals are subtly activated. Some have speculated that the entire pyramid is an ancient acoustic device, one designed to resonate with Earth's natural frequencies and the human body simultaneously. Now at this above the king's chamber is what some call the crack. It's a long split in one of the granite beams overhead. At first glance, it seems like damage. But what if it's deliberate? What if it functions like a tuning notch, slightly altering the frequency profile of the chamber? A tiny shift in geometry creates a huge shift in sound. And what if it was designed to respond to the voice? In many mystical traditions, sacred words are not just symbols. They are vibrations that shape reality. Logos in Greek means both word and reason. In Egyptian theology, the first act of creation was speech vibration forming matter. Maybe the king's chamber wasn't built to store a body. Maybe it was built to receive a voice, a human voice, a divine name, a tone that only initiates could find chant or hear, a frequency that would cause the pyramid itself to resonate echo back and align the body with something greater. Let's pause. It's dark now, the torchlight flickering. You're still lying in the granite box? Your breath slow, heartbeat rhythmic. You begin to feel the room isn't silent, it's alive. You are inside an instrument. The question isn't, what is it for? The question is, are you ready to be played? Because maybe the builders weren't just stonemasons. They were sound engineers, and the pyramid wasn't their monument, it was their song. You rise slowly from the granite sarcophagus, still feeling the resonance in your chest, long after the last hum fades. The air tastes metallic like the aftermath of a thunderstorm. Something shifted. Something lingers. Now follow me downward, not through air, but into stone. Beneath the pyramid lies another layer of mystery often forgotten, rarely explored. A realm not of chambers and corridors, but of water. Yes, beneath the Great Pyramid is a network of subterranean passages, shafts, and even a deep chamber partially submerged in water. At first glance, it seems like geological coincidence, groundwater seeping into cavities, erosion over time. But what if it's not coincidence at all? What if water was part of the design? Ancient Egyptian cosmology begins not with Earth, but with the primordial waters, none the infinite, undifferentiated abyss from which creation arose. The Nile wasn't just a river. It was a living artery of divine energy. And in that worldview, water wasn't just for drinking. It was a conductor of life force, memory, even power. Now picture the bedrock beneath the pyramid. There's a chamber unfinished, roughly carved, yet intentionally placed. Some researchers believe this subterranean chamber served as an energetic grounding point, connecting the pyramid to the Earth's own frequencies. Above it, narrow shafts snake upward. Some align with stars, others seem to go nowhere. But from a systems perspective, what if those shafts served not air, but pressure movement flow? Hydraulic engineers have pointed out something remarkable. If water from the Nile, specifically from a nearby branch that once flowed much closer, was channeled beneath the pyramid into these tunnels, the rising and falling water levels could create a pumping effect, a hydraulic pulse. And when pressure builds in a sealed system like this, especially one made of conductive stone, it can generate energy. Now it sounds like fantasy, but take a breath and stay with me. In the 20th century, a man named Edward Kunkel proposed the Great Pyramid was a giant water pump, a theory largely dismissed by mainstream academia. But Kunkel pointed out that certain features of the pyramid, like the so-called Queen's Chamber, with its unusual grooves and corroded marks, looked suspiciously like parts of an ancient pressure system. Others built on this idea. Christopher Dunn, a mechanical engineer, suggested the pyramid functioned as a large resonance device powered by hydraulic compression. That is, water flowed underneath, created pulses of energy, and those pulses activated specific frequencies in the king's chamber above. And remember, granite resonates. Quartz responds to pressure. Sound amplifies in tuned spaces. You begin to see how the system fits together. A layered machine, earth, water, stone, air, and fire. Not flames, but electromagnetic fire. Subtle energy moving through the pyramid like breath through a body. Some believe that the ancient Egyptians, or those who came before, were tapping into the Earth's own telluric currents, amplifying natural frequencies for healing, transformation, or even communication. Communication with what? Maybe stars. Maybe higher planes of consciousness? Maybe the self. Now think again about the shafts inside the pyramid. Those tiny, seemingly purposeless passages that extend from the chambers to the outer casing. Robotic cameras have explored them in recent years. Some led to doors, sealed stone panels with copper handles. Doors that go nowhere, yet block access to somewhere. Why seal them? Why build a passageway so narrow, so exact, only to end it with a hidden door? Because the system was not for bodies, it was for forces, pressures, currents, maybe even vibrations in water like the pulse of the earth itself, being fed upward through the heart of the pyramid. Now step back and consider the pyramid's placement once more. It sits upon a limestone plateau, porous rock that allows water to flow, rise, and move beneath. It's almost as if the site was chosen, not for visibility, but conductivity, not for ceremony, but function. And then there's the Nile. In ancient times, it ran much closer to the base of the pyramid. Some believe the builders redirected it, channeled a part of it toward a hidden basin beneath the structure. Others go further and say that the entire Giza plateau was once a machine, a network of pyramids, sphinx, and subterranean tunnels acting as one living system. And then it stopped. Why? Did the water dry? Did the knowledge fade? Or was it taken away, sealed deliberately to prevent misuse? Because power without wisdom is a dangerous thing. And maybe the builders knew that. Maybe the technology was not lost, but hidden. Hidden beneath the sand and shafts we can't access in rooms we haven't discovered. Waiting. Sleeping. And now, as you stand in the chamber below, your torchlight casting shadows on water-darkened walls, the silence feels less empty and more like a breath held for millennia. Something ancient watches here, not with eyes, but with memory. And it seems to ask you not, what do you seek, but what will you do when you remember? You climb slowly out of the subterranean chamber. Water still dripping somewhere behind you, echoing like a heartbeat in stone. As your feet find the solid limestone corridor once more, you begin to sense that the pyramid wasn't just designed to contain the elements, it was built to tune them. Stone, sound, and water aligned. But there's one more element we haven't touched yet. Something far subtler. Something the ancients might have considered the most important of all the human body. And not just the body, but its potential to heal, to transform, to transcend. Let's step gently into this next chamber, not of stone, but of awareness. For centuries, people have reported unusual sensations inside the pyramid. Lightheadedness, clarity, euphoria, vivid dreams, spontaneous emotional release. Some laugh, some cry. Some say nothing, just sit in silence for hours, unable to explain what they feel. Science often dismisses this as the power of suggestion. But ancient traditions suggest something else, something deliberate. What if the pyramid was a healing machine? Not metaphorically, a literal space for cellular restoration, spiritual cleansing, and altered states of consciousness. The ancient Egyptians saw the body as a temple, each organ governed by a god, each action harmonized with divine law. They understood that the body wasn't a machine to be fixed, but an instrument to be tuned. And the pyramid may have been their grandest tuning fork. Remember those frequencies we talked about earlier? The 110 Hz tones that resonate powerfully in the King's Chamber. Modern research shows that frequencies in this range influence the body's nervous system, stimulate the vagus nerve, and encourage the production of alpha brainwaves. These brainwaves are associated with calm creativity and introspection. Now imagine chanting inside the granite box, your voice echoing, looping, layering with itself. until your entire body vibrates from the inside out. No electronics, no wires, just you, stone and sound. This isn't New Age fantasy, it's physics, cymatics. The study of visible sound vibrations shows that sound can shape matter, create patterns, form order out of chaos. And if that's true, then the reverse must be too. Disorder can be harmonized through frequency. What if that was the pyramid's function? An energy chamber built not for the dead, but for the living. A place where people entered sick, broken, disconnected, and emerged realigned, purified, tuned. Ancient texts refer to the House of Life, a place where priests practiced medicine, alchemy, and sacred ritual. Some believe this house wasn't a separate building, but the pyramid itself. Not a tomb, but a temple of transformation. And this brings us to another ancient symbol, the Ankh. Often called the key of life, the Ankh appears in countless Egyptian carvings, held by gods offered to pharaohs, always near the mouth or third eye. Its shape is said to represent the human form, or the loop of energy that flows through the body, through breath, through sound. Some esoteric traditions suggest the Ankh was more than a symbol. It was a device, a conductor, a harmonic tool used in rituals to direct energy within the pyramid, placed on pressure points, aligned with sacred geometry, used in chanting. You begin to realize the ancients didn't divide spirit and science. They combined them. Every wall carving, every symbol, every chant, it wasn't art. It was instruction, a manual, a memory of how to live in alignment with forces we no longer name. And the pyramid. It was the classroom, the amplifier, the sanctuary. But what happens when people forget how to use sacred technology? It becomes myth. It becomes mystery. It becomes stone. Yet here you are, walking through corridors, once shaped by hands that knew how to use sound as a scalpel, geometry as a balm. And as you reach a small alcove near the Queen's chamber, you pause. This room has always puzzled archaeologists. No body was found. No inscriptions. No offerings. Just a silence that hangs differently. Some say it was used for preparation before an initiate entered the king's chamber. Others say it was the feminine counterpart, the yin to the yang, the chamber of gestation before the chamber of rebirth. You close your eyes. For a moment, your breath matches the stillness, and it feels like the pyramid is breathing with you, because perhaps that's the point. Perhaps healing isn't something that happens to you, but something you remember within you. A resonance that aligns when you stop resisting. When you listen. And perhaps the pyramid was built not to last forever, but to remind us forever. That energy is not external. It's always been here. It's you. You step softly now, your bare feet brushing smooth stone, your heartbeat still syncing with the hush that lives in the pyramid's bones. You're beginning to understand something unspoken, not with facts, but with sensation. The pyramid doesn't just exist, it teaches. But to learn from it, you must listen in ways most of the world has forgotten. And now we ask one of the most uncomfortable questions of all. What tools did they really use? The accepted story tells us copper chisels, ropes, pulleys, and sleds. But you've seen the granite sarcophagus. You've touched the interlocking blocks, cut with superhuman precision. You've heard the resonant chambers hum with frequencies that bend the air itself. And now quietly, something inside you rebels. Copper isn't enough, so let's reframe the question. What if the ancients didn't rely on brute force at all? What if they harnessed something subtler? Something we're only beginning to rediscover. Consider the softening of stone. All across the ancient world, in Egypt, Peru, Bolivia, and Cambodia, there are megaliths so precisely shaped, it looks as though the stone was poured, not carved, fitted like melted wax, smooth curves, seamless joints, no tool marks, no explanation. There are oral traditions in the Andes of shamans who could sing to the stones, causing them to become malleable. In India, stories persist of levitating stones moved with mantra. In Egypt, high priests were said to command matter with words. Myth maybe. But then we discover a detail. A forgotten footnote, a dismissed anomaly. In the Amazon, a researcher named Father Crespi collected artifacts given to him by indigenous tribes. Among them were copper plates, strange tablets, and items that appeared to contain unknown alloys, none of which aligned with any known Amazonian technology. Many were covered in geometric patterns. Some were taken, others vanished. And then there's the curious tale of Professor Brian Furster's research into plant-based compounds. In Bolivia and Peru, locals speak of a black liquid sourced from jungle plants that could weaken the stone, making it soft, workable, shapeable by hand. Some tribes still keep the recipe secret. Could the ancients have had botanical knowledge we've lost, a form of natural alchemy that let them alter the molecular structure of stone? Let's go deeper. At the megalithic site of Pumapunku in Bolivia, there are stones cut with right angles, drill holes, and U-shaped channels so exact they rival modern machining. Some edges are laser straight, yet there's no evidence of diamond tools, no metal blades, just the stone itself standing as proof of forgotten capabilities. Then there's the question of transport. Blocks weighing 50-80 tons were moved over miles, sometimes uphill, through sand across rivers. No cranes, no trucks. And yet these cultures did it. Or perhaps they didn't move them. Perhaps they floated them. Acoustic levitation is a real phenomenon documented in laboratories. By creating standing waves with high-frequency sound, scientists have been able to suspend small objects in midair. What if the ancients scaled this up, not through electronics, but through resonance chambers, sacred tones, and collective vibration? This isn't pure speculation. In 1939, a Swedish doctor named Jarl reportedly witnessed Tibetan monks using musical instruments, longhorns, drums, and chants to lift huge stones up a cliff face. The story was suppressed, the photos vanished, but echoes of it remain. Now ask yourself, if you lived in harmony with nature, if your science was based not on combustion, but on vibration, how would you build? Maybe with tools that leave no marks, maybe with intention, maybe with tone. And what if that's why we've never found the tools? Because the tools weren't made of metal or stone. They were made of sound. The builders, as some call them, may have wielded a form of technology that wasn't high-tech as we define it, but high resonance. Their tools may have been frequencies, their blueprints encoded in sacred geometry, their memory passed through myth because language couldn't hold it. We buried their knowledge beneath modern certainty. And the pyramids, they stood still, they waited. And now you stand here, fingertips against a block larger than a truck, marveling not at what was built, but at how simple it looks once you feel it. As if the stone yielded willingly to hands that understood how to ask. You breathe. A hum rises in your throat. Not speech, not song, just vibration. And for a fleeting moment, you feel the stone hum back. The sound fades. Not because it disappears, but because it blends with the walls, with the air, with your body. You're not simply in the pyramid now. You are part of it. A single note in a song written in stone. And you're beginning to suspect that the true blueprint of this place isn't buried in the sand. It's suspended in the sky. Let's look up. The Great Pyramid's placement is no accident. It faces true north, off by a margin so slight, even with today's satellite data, we struggle to improve it. The three pyramids of Giza are aligned so perfectly with Orion's belt that star maps confirm the match, not vaguely, not symbolically, but mathematically. The smallest pyramid is slightly offset, just like the smallest star in Orion's belt, Mintaka. Coincidence? Or cosmic architecture? Ancient Egyptian texts make it clear the stars were not just lights. They were beings, destinations, homes of gods. The Orion constellation was associated with Osiris, the god of death and rebirth, the star Sirius with Isis, the divine mother. Their cycles rising, setting, disappearance, were woven into myth ritual and timekeeping. Now consider this: the shafts in the Great Pyramid's king's chamber are not air vents. They point precisely to the stars, one to Orion, one to Sirius. You stand beneath thousands of tons of stone in a chamber tuned for resonance, surrounded by materials that conduct energy. And the walls point your attention not to the tomb, but to the sky. This was not an accident. This was instruction. The ancients believed in the idea of as above, so below, that what happens in the heavens mirrors what happens on earth. The pyramids may have been built as harmonic mirrors, grounded reflections of celestial truths. Let's pull back. Map the placement of ancient monuments across the globe. You'll find that the Great Pyramid sits near the intersection of the longest lines of latitude and longitude across all landmasses. Geometrically, it's the Earth's center. More than that, connect the dots. Machu Picchu, Easter Island, Angkor Wat, the Great Pyramid. Many of these sites lie along a single great circle, one that wraps the Earth like a cosmic belt. Engineers call it the Earth Grid. Mystics call it the ley lines. Either way, it implies that ancient civilizations knew something about Earth's geometry, energy, and how to interact with it. And the pyramids. They are the tuning forks placed at the node. Now shift perspective again. Zoom out farther. The proportions of the pyramid encode planetary math. Divide its base perimeter by twice its height, and you get pi. Multiply its height by 43,200, a sacred number in many traditions, and you get the polar radius of the Earth. That number again, 43,200, appears in the Sumerian king lists in the precession of the equinoxes in Vedic cycles. It's not arbitrary, it's encoded. Ask yourself who encodes global mathematics into a building and why. The pyramid is not a monument. It's a message, and it's written in a language so old, so elegant, that we forgot how to read it. We built satellites but forgot where to aim them. We built equations but forgot the harmonics behind them. We looked at the stars, but forgot to listen. Ancient cultures. Mayan, Egyptian, Dogon, Hindu, all revered Orion, Sirius, and the Pleiades. All built their temples, cities, and myths around stellar alignments. Yet, they had no telescopes, no astrophysics, unless they remembered something we no longer believe. Maybe Earth was once part of a network, a conscious effort to connect heaven and earth frequency and form human and divine. Maybe the ancients weren't trying to impress the gods. Maybe they were communing with them. And the pyramid? It was their antenna, a grounded star, a beacon, a memory. Now you're back on the plateau outside under a sea of stars. You tilt your head. The three pyramids rise like teeth of time, mirroring the belt above. The night is still. The stars do not blink. And you understand without words that this was not a tomb. This was alignment. This was a structure meant to speak to the stars, and perhaps to help you remember that you came from them. And now you walk once more, not upward, not downward, but inward, into a realization that's been rising with every step, that the Great Pyramid was never just stone and labor and pride. It was a language one carved not into parchment, but into the very architecture of Earth. We've spoken of geometry, of sound, of alignment. But beneath all that is something more fundamental, something that binds them all together like a thread drawn through a loom. That something is energy, not electricity, not steam, not combustion, but something older, quieter, purer. What if the pyramid was built to harness the natural rhythms of the Earth? The pulsing fields, the electric tension of the ionosphere, the hidden hum that exists in every molecule of stone, every drop of water. There's a name for this idea in the ancient texts: ma'at, balance, order, flow. The ancients believed that everything in the universe moved according to sacred law, that each being, each structure, each planet had its own signature, a vibrational fingerprint. And when those vibrations aligned, they formed harmony, healing, illumination. The pyramid then wasn't a singular device. It was a translator, a way to speak the language of vibration itself. Now consider what happens when you enter such a space. A structure aligned with the stars, built upon magnetic energy lines, constructed with resonant stone, shaped by golden ratios and planetary geometry. What happens to the body, to the mind, to the soul? Even now, those who spend time inside the pyramid report strange sensations, clarity, weightlessness, dreams that feel more like memories. Some say the energy amplifies intention. Others say it reveals what's already hidden within you. And maybe that's the real secret. The pyramid doesn't hold the power. You do. The structure simply reminds you how to find it. Imagine this: a civilization not obsessed with control, but with connection. Not building towers to dominate the skies, but temples to align with them. Not burying their dead in grand tombs, but guiding their living through sacred sound, light, and form. What would such a people be like? Peaceful, wise, eternal. Maybe the lost civilization isn't lost at all. Maybe it's buried beneath our own noise, our towers, our networks, our endless distraction. Maybe the technology wasn't forbidden, just forgotten. And now we begin to remember, because the pyramid still stands, still resonates, still waits. So as you turn back one last time, standing at the threshold between night and morning, stone and sky, you feel it not in your ears, not in your eyes, but in your chest. A hum, a code, a reminder that the greatest technology is not metal or machine, but harmony. The pyramid was never trying to keep secrets. It was trying to sing. And tonight, you heard it.